Hi there. I want to talk a little bit about. I know it's really noisy. I want to talk a little bit about. I want to talk a little bit about being able to be musical with the scale patterns because it's kind of one of those things that keeps coming up as becoming a problem because if you don't feel extremely at home with the scale patterns, chances are that you will kind of be trapped within them. And what I mean by this is that it's so easily you so easily just end up playing a scale pattern. And I guess this is one of those points where the guys like myself who really enjoy playing fast will be categorized as non-musical. And fuck that, man. But what I mean, the reason that I'm talking about this is that I remember that, and I've seen also students of mine who very often end up in a situation where they just go through a scale and not even fast, because I mean it's cool to play a scale from one end to the next if you have some kind of idea with it, like playing really fast or something like that. But if you don't, then it's just going through a scale, switching off the brain. And that's also kind of an annoying thing to say, I know, because I love turbo switching off the brain and because I think that when you use the brain too much, the chances of or the possibility of being musical is being a little more limited. So if you think too much, you will play with a more of a theoretical approach, um, as opposed to listening and then being musical, because being musical sounds like also kind of a weird thing. But what I mean with that is that if you play over some chords, the chords will make you think of a more musical direction. But if you don't hear the chords because you're caught up in thinking about what notes can I play now or what shapes can I use now, then your approach will be a little more theoretical and a little more, you'll use your energy on other things other than being musical. So what do you do when you want to be musical but you still want to rely on the scale patterns, because this type of playing relies a lot of scales on scales and shapes, stuff like that. What happens is that when you keep practicing the scales, you'll reach a point where you don't think about them anymore. It's kind of, you're in the scales, you're using the scales, but you don't really think of them. And this is the point where you want to reach, because then you can do that wonderful mixture of being musical and play advanced crazy chops and stuff like that, and improvising at the same time. So this is the point where you need to reach. And I'm also speaking to you of a lot of guitar players have been playing for a long time, and they're not really, they don't know the scales well enough. And if I had a nickel for every time I hear guys say, yeah, I know the scales, and then I ask them of a specific scale, and it's something like this, I would have about $10. Now, what I mean with this is that there's a lot of guitar players believe they know the scales, and they familiarize themselves to some degree with some of the scales, but they don't know them to the extent where they get the freedom to be musical. So my idea with this video is to force you to practice the scales, but do it in a way that makes sense. I don't want to say go learn all the scales all over the fretboard, because it's such a huge subject. So I want you to take a specific step, which is take one scale pattern and get so familiarized with it so you don't have to think about it anymore. You are able to visualize it, see it in your head, and then try to make music with it. And I'm not talking about creating a piece of Beethoven or something like that with a scale pattern. So for example, choose a scale pattern. I'm just choosing the second one now, for example. And I'm starting a random place. Okay, I'm doing some also a little bit stuff outside the scale pattern, but you get the idea. Choose one scale and learn to use it in a way where you don't have to think about it anymore. And then start to create some music with it. And it's obviously easier if you find a backing track that fits within it, because the backing track will make it easier to be musical and get some ideas in your head, because now I'm just creating something from nothing, you know. And this is also a great skill to be able to do this, but start with the backing track and start with one scale pattern and reach this point where you know it well enough to be able to improvise within the scale pattern without being, you know, forced to, you know, 1 2 3 1 2 3 kind of. You don't want to end up in this scale, just end up playing the scale pattern up and down. That's not, I wouldn't consider that, I wouldn't call that music. It's just a lesson or something like that. So